The Kethmaran Empire had conquered 17 star systems without losing a single capital ship. Their crimson fleet swept through the galaxy like a plague, crushing resistance with methodical precision. Admiral Zexthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue-green planet called Earth rotate slowly on the tactical display. "Another primitive world," he muttered to his tactical officer. "Their technology barely reaches beyond their own moon. This will be concluded within a solar cycle." The Kethmarans had studied Earth for months. They observed the humans' crude nuclear weapons, their simple chemical rockets, and their fragmented political systems. Every calculation suggested this would be their easiest conquest yet. The planet possessed valuable mineral deposits and a strategic location near several hyperspace lanes, making it perfect for their expanding empire. Commander Velthar approached with the invasion assessment. "Admiral, our scouts report approximately 8 billion inhabitants across multiple continents. They possess no energy shields, no plasma weaponry, and no faster-than-light vessels. Our preliminary bombardment should eliminate their major military installations within hours." Zexthal nodded approvingly. The Kethmaran way was swift and decisive. They would demonstrate their superiority, demand surrender, and integrate the survivors into their labor force. It had worked on every world they had encountered, but as their massive dreadnoughts descended through Earth's atmosphere, something unexpected happened. Instead of panic and immediate capitulation, the humans began coordinating a response that defied all their projections. In the Pentagon, General Sarah Chen stared at the radar screens, showing objects larger than aircraft carriers materializing in Earth's skies. "How many?" she asked her aide. 17 confirmed vessels, General, each one approximately 2 kilometers in length. They're maintaining position above major population centers." Chen had been preparing for this possibility ever since the first alien signals were detected 6 months earlier. While politicians debated and scientists theorized, she had quietly assembled a response team drawing from every military tradition on Earth. She understood that conventional warfare might prove inadequate against such advanced technology. "Initiate Protocol 7, she ordered. "Contact every Special Forces unit on the planet. Rangers, SEALs, Spetsnaz, SAS, Commandos, GIGN, everyone. We're going to need our best." The alien ships began their assault with surgical precision, targeting military bases and communication networks. But the humans had learned from decades of asymmetric warfare. Their special forces units had already dispersed into the wilderness, urban environments, and underground facilities that the aliens had dismissed as insignificant. Master Sergeant Jake Morrison crouched in the ruins of a bombed-out city, watching through his scope as alien troops deployed from their transport craft. The beings were tall and insectoid, with chitinous armor that seemed to absorb most conventional gunfire. But Morrison had noticed something during the initial attacks. The aliens moved with the confidence of beings who had never faced serious resistance. "This is Ghost 7 to all call signs," he whispered into his radio. "Target assessment confirms they're not wearing full environmental suits. Repeat, they're breathing our atmosphere directly." This observation would prove crucial. The humans began developing tactics that exploited every perceived weakness. They used the planet's diverse environments against their invaders, leading them into swamps, mountains, and urban mazes, where superior technology meant less than intimate knowledge of the terrain. Captain Maria Santos led her team through the Amazon rainforest, setting up ambush points along routes the aliens were using to establish forward bases. "They scan for metal and energy signatures," she reported to command, "but they're ignoring organic compounds and natural materials." The human resistance began adapting with frightening speed. They crafted weapons from materials that didn't register on alien sensors, used biological agents the invaders had no immunity against, and employed psychological warfare that exploited the aliens' complete lack of understanding about human nature. In a command bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Chen coordinated with military leaders from around the world. "The aliens are requesting our surrender through every communication channel," reported Colonel Williams. "They're offering to spare major population centers if we submit immediately." "What's their timeline?" Chen asked. "They've given us 72 hours. Chen studied the tactical displays showing skirmishes across 6 continents. Tell them we need time to consider their offer. Meanwhile, continue Phase 2 operations. Phase 2 involved something the aliens had never encountered in their previous conquests: human creativity applied to warfare. Teams of engineers and special forces operators worked together to create improvised weapons and tactics that exploited the fundamental differences between human and alien psychology. The Kethmorans expected fear and submission. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to grow more dangerous with each passing hour. Their landing parties reported increasing casualties from attacks that their sensors couldn't predict or prevent. Admiral Zexthul reviewed the reports with growing confusion. How are they penetrating our armor with such primitive weapons? The humans appear to be targeting joint connections and using corrosive compounds we hadn't analyzed, Velthar reported. They're also employing tactics that seem to prioritize disruption over direct confrontation. What the aliens didn't understand was that humans had spent millennia perfecting the art of killing each other. Every culture on Earth had contributed some form of warfare innovation to the species' collective knowledge. The Resistance drew from samurai sword techniques to adapt melee combat for alien anatomy, used Viking berserker psychology to inspire fearless charges, and employed Native American tracking skills to hunt their technologically superior enemies. Lieutenant David Park led a mixed unit of Korean and Japanese special forces through the ruins of Seoul. They had developed a tactic they called ghost strikes, appearing from nowhere to disable alien equipment, then vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. Their reaction time is about 2.3 seconds from initial contact. Park observed through his scope. They rely heavily on their sensors, but they panic when those sensors give them conflicting information. The humans began using this vulnerability ruthlessly. They created false signatures, deployed decoys, and used the aliens' own technology against them whenever possible. Captured alien weapons were quickly reverse-engineered and modified for human use. Dr. Emily Watson worked frantically in a hidden laboratory beneath the ruins of MIT. The energy cells from their hand weapons can be overloaded to create explosive devices, she reported to the Resistance Network. We can also use their communication frequencies to track their movements. As the 72-hour deadline approached, the Kethmorans began to realize they were facing something unprecedented. Every previous conquest had followed the same pattern: overwhelming show of force, demand for surrender, integration of survivors. But the humans refused to follow this script. Instead of cowering in their cities, they had dispersed into small, mobile units that struck without warning. Instead of protecting their infrastructure, they had sacrificed it to create obstacles and ambush sites. Instead of seeking peace, they seemed determined to make every meter of their planet cost the invaders dearly. Admiral Zexthul stood before his war council, studying casualty reports that defied all their previous experience. In 3 days, we have lost more ground troops than in the conquest of the entire Velnari system. How is this possible? The humans appear to have no central command structure that we can target, reported intelligence officer Kexval. They operate in autonomous cells that adapt their tactics in real time. When we eliminate one group, their wonders in plotting that 2 more appear using completely different methods. The truth was even more remarkable than the aliens realized. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their diversity. Every culture, every military tradition, every hard-learned lesson from thousands of years of conflict had been brought to bear against the invaders. Russian Spetsnaz used brutal close-quarters techniques developed in the mountains of Afghanistan. British SAS employed stealth and sabotage perfected in the jungles of Southeast Asia. American Delta Force adapted urban warfare tactics from Middle Eastern conflicts. Australian SAS brought desert survival skills that let them operate in impossible conditions. The aliens had expected to face a unified resistance that could be broken by eliminating key leaders. Instead, they found themselves fighting dozens of different military philosophies simultaneously, each one adapted to exploit a different weakness in Kethmoran doctrine. As reports continued to pour in from around the globe, Admiral Zexthul began to understand that his empire might have finally encountered something it couldn't simply overwhelm with superior firepower. The humans were teaching them a harsh lesson about the difference between technological advancement and warrior culture. The 72-hour deadline passed without a human surrender. Instead, The aliens received a response that would echo through their military history for generations to come. General Chen's voice crackled across every communication frequency as she delivered humanity's answer to their ultimatum. You want our planet? Come and take it. But know this. Every step will cost you. Every victory will be paid for in blood. We are not like the others you've conquered. We are human. And we do not yield. The real war was about to begin. The war had been raging for 3 months when Admiral Zex Thul made the decision that would seal his fate. Standing in his command chamber aboard the flagship Dominance, he stared at casualty reports that seemed impossible. His invasion force had been reduced by 40%, and they hadn't secured a single major population center. This ends now, he declared to his assembled commanders. Deploy the Shadow Legion. A collective silence fell over the chamber. The Shadow Legion was the Kethmaran Empire's most elite fighting force, genetically enhanced warriors who had never known defeat. They were deployed only when conventional forces proved insufficient, and their reputation alone had brought entire worlds to their knees. Commander Velthar hesitated before speaking. Admiral, the Shadow Legion has never been deployed against a primitive species. Perhaps conventional reinforcements would be more appropriate? Zex Thul's multiple eyes fixed on his subordinate with cold fury. Conventional forces have failed against these humans for 3 months. They fight like demons and die like martyrs. We need warriors who match their ferocity. The Shadow Legion consisted of exactly 1,000 beings, each one the product of centuries of genetic enhancement and military conditioning. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, their exoskeletons reinforced with quantum-bonded armor that could withstand direct hits from plasma cannons. Their reflexes operated at superhuman speeds, and their tactical intelligence had been enhanced far beyond normal Kethmaran capabilities. General Korthax led the Shadow Legion from the front, as was their tradition. He studied the intelligence reports about human resistance tactics with genuine interest. The first time any species had presented enough challenge to warrant detailed analysis. These creatures are remarkable, he told his lieutenants, as their transport ships descended toward Earth's surface. They possess no enhanced physiology, yet they continue fighting against impossible odds. We will learn much from breaking them. The humans had indeed proven more resilient than anyone had anticipated. What started as scattered resistance had evolved into a coordinated global campaign that turned Earth's entire surface into a battlefield. The aliens controlled the skies and could strike any fixed target, but they couldn't hold ground against an enemy that refused to stay in one place long enough to be eliminated. Sergeant First Class Maria Gonzalez crouched in the ruins of Mexico City, coordinating with resistance cells across North America. Her unit had grown from 12 soldiers to nearly 300 fighters drawn from local populations who had learned to fight using captured alien weapons and improvised tactics. Intelligence reports new alien deployments, she spoke into her encrypted radio. Large transports landing at coordinates we've been tracking. These aren't regular troops. They're moving differently. The Shadow Legion's arrival marked a dramatic escalation in the conflict. Unlike regular Kethmaran forces, these elite warriors didn't rely on overwhelming firepower and technological superiority. They were hunters, designed to track and eliminate specific targets with surgical precision. Captain James Mitchell learned this the hard way when his British SAS unit encountered the first Shadow Legion patrol in the ruins of London. His team had been moving through their sector using tactics that had worked flawlessly against regular alien forces, staying mobile, avoiding detection, striking only when they had overwhelming local advantage. Contact front, his pointman whispered over the radio, then went silent. Mitchell moved forward to find his scout's position empty except for a small amount of green ichor on the concrete. No body, no sound, no sign of struggle. Just one of his best men gone without a trace. All call signs. We have a problem, he transmitted to nearby units. Something just took down Corporal Williams without making a sound. These aren't the same aliens we've been fighting. The Shadow Legion operated with a patience and methodology that regular Kethmaran troops lacked. They studied their human opponents, learned their patterns, and began systematically eliminating resistance leaders with surgical strikes that left the rest of humanity's forces confused and demoralized. Dr. Emily Watson's hidden laboratory was discovered and destroyed in a raid that lasted exactly 97 seconds. Master Sergeant Jake Morrison's unit was ambushed while conducting what should have been a routine supply run. Captain Maria Santos found her Amazon stronghold surrounded by enemies who had somehow tracked her through terrain that had protected her for months. The aliens' new tactics were devastatingly effective, but they also revealed something crucial about human nature that the Kethmorans still didn't understand. Each loss didn't weaken human resolve, it strengthened it. Lieutenant Colonel Chen Wei sat in his underground command post beneath the ruins of Beijing, studying reports of the new alien forces. As the son of General Sarah Chen, he had inherited both her tactical brilliance and her absolute refusal to accept defeat. "They're better than us," he told his staff officers bluntly. "Faster, stronger, better equipped, better trained. In any conventional sense, we can't win against these new forces." "Then what do we do?" asked Major Liu, his intelligence officer. "We stop fighting conventionally," Chen Wei replied. "Time to show these invaders what humans do when we're really desperate." The change in human tactics was subtle at first, then became increasingly dramatic. Instead of trying to avoid the Shadow Legion, human units began seeking them out. Instead of preserving their forces for strategic objectives, they started treating every encounter as if it were their last battle. The Kethmorans had encountered desperate enemies before, but human desperation took forms they had never imagined. Resistance fighters began using suicide tactics that weren't just about maximizing damage. They were about sending messages. Corporal Anna Petrov's final transmission came from the ruins of Stalingrad, where her unit had been cornered by a full Shadow Legion hunting pack. "This is Valkyrie 7 to all stations. We're surrounded and out of ammunition. Tell my family I died, fighting. Tell the aliens they picked the wrong species to hunt." The explosion that followed took out an entire city block and eliminated 6 Shadow Legion warriors, the first casualties the elite force had suffered in decades of combat. But more importantly, it demonstrated something that would spread through human resistance cells across the globe. The humans weren't just fighting for victory anymore. They were fighting to prove that even in defeat, they could exact a price that would make their enemies remember them forever. General Korthax studied the after-action reports with growing concern. His Shadow Legion was designed to break enemy morale through precise elimination of key targets. Instead, the humans seemed to become more dangerous as their situation became more hopeless. "They're not behaving rationally," he reported to Admiral Zex Thul. "When cornered, most species either surrender or attempt to flee. These humans seem to become exponentially more violent when faced with certain death. Then eliminate them faster," Zex Thul replied coldly. "Increase the pace of operations. Give them no time to adapt." But acceleration proved to be exactly the wrong strategy. The faster the Shadow Legion moved, the more desperate the human resistance became. And desperate humans, the aliens learned, were capable of innovations that defied all military logic. Team Alpha 7 had been reduced to 3 men when they encountered a Shadow Legion patrol in the ruins of Detroit. Instead of attempting to escape or find defensive positions, they did something that no Kethmoran tactical computer could have predicted. They stripped themselves of all equipment and charged the aliens with nothing but combat knives and improvised explosives. The attack succeeded not because it was tactically sound, but because it was completely insane. The Shadow Legion warriors, for all their enhancements and training, had never faced opponents who abandoned all concern for their own survival in pursuit of inflicting maximum damage. Private First Class, Michael Torres's final words, broadcast on all human resistance frequencies, became a rallying cry that echoed across 6 continents. "If you're listening to this, it means we're gone. But we took 8 of their best with us. Your move." The psychological impact of such tactics began affecting even the enhanced minds of the Shadow Legion. They were designed to be perfect hunters, but their prey was teaching them that sometimes the hunted could become more dangerous than the hunter. Major Hassan al-Rashid had been coordinating resistance operations across the Middle East when his position was compromised by Shadow Legion reconnaissance. Instead of attempting to escape, he made a decision that would become legendary among human survivors. "All units, this is Desert Storm Actual." He transmitted on open frequencies that he knew the aliens were monitoring. "I'm about to show these invaders what happens when you back a human into a corner." What followed was a 17-hour running battle through the streets of Damascus, with al-Rashid's 60 remaining fighters leading an entire Shadow Legion company through a maze of improvised traps, ambush sites, and suicide attacks. By the time the fighting ended, the alien force had been reduced to 12 survivors, and the humans had inflicted casualties that would require the Empire to reconsider its entire approach to the conquest of Earth. Admiral Zexthul received General Korthax's final transmission from the surface with a mixture of rage and dawning horror. "Admiral, we have underestimated this species catastrophically. The Shadow Legion has suffered 60% casualties in 2 weeks of operations. I am requesting immediate reinforcement with full fleet assets." "Denied," Zexthul replied automatically, then paused as the implications sank in. The Shadow Legion had never suffered 60% casualties in 6 months of operations, let alone 2 weeks. "Admiral," Korthax continued, "you need to understand what we're facing down here. These humans don't fight like any species we've encountered. They treat death as a weapon. They use their own mortality as a tactical advantage. We are not fighting an army. We are fighting an entire species that has chosen extinction over surrender." The truth was even more profound than the general realized. Humanity hadn't just chosen to fight against impossible odds. They had chosen to make their last stand so costly that it would serve as a warning to any other species that might consider Earth an easy target. In bunkers and ruins across the planet, the remaining human survivors prepared for what they knew would be their final battles. They had no illusions about victory in any conventional sense, but they had learned something about themselves that even they hadn't known before the war began. Humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to matter. And if they were going to be remembered by the galaxy, they would be remembered as the species that turned its own extinction into the most expensive real estate in the known universe. The Shadow Legion's survivors began reporting something that had never appeared in Kethmoran military records before. Their elite warriors were requesting rotation away from active duty. The psychological strain of fighting an enemy that seemed to grow more dangerous as it grew more desperate was breaking even enhanced minds. But Admiral Zexthul had made his decision. The humans had cost him too much to simply withdraw. Pride, reputation, and the future of the Empire's expansion were at stake. He would commit every resource at his disposal to ensure that Earth fell, regardless of the cost. He had no idea that the humans were counting on exactly that response. Admiral Zexthul stood before the holographic display showing Earth's scarred surface, his multiple eyes reflecting the red glow of burning cities. 6 months had passed since the deployment of the Shadow Legion, and what remained of his elite forces was requesting immediate evacuation. The impossible had happened. His most deadly warriors had been broken by a species that barely possessed spaceflight. "Prepare the extinction protocol," he commanded his staff, the words carrying the weight of absolute finality. The bridge fell silent. The extinction protocol had been used only 3 times in the Empire's history, and only against species that posed existential threats to Kethmoran expansion. It involved the systematic sterilization of an entire planet, using weapons that would render it uninhabitable for millennia. "Admiral," Commander Velthar ventured carefully, "the planet still holds significant strategic and resource value. Perhaps a more measured approach." "No." Zexthul's voice cut through the bridge like a blade. "This species has cost me 17 capital ships, 300,000 troops, and the entire Shadow Legion. They will serve as an example to the galaxy of what happens when the Empire is defied." But the humans had been preparing for this moment since the war began. Deep in the bunkers beneath Cheyenne Mountain, General Sarah Chen addressed the last gathering of Earth's military leadership. Fewer than 50,000 organized resistance fighters remained active across the planet, supported by perhaps 1 million civilians who continued to provide intelligence and supplies. "We always knew it would end this way," she told the assembled officers via encrypted quantum communication. "We've seen the orbital weapons platforms they're positioning. In 72 hours, they're going to try to burn our world clean." Colonel Martinez, speaking from his position in the ruins of Mexico City, asked the question they all dreaded. "Do we have any chance of stopping them?" Chen's smile was grim but determined. "No. But we can make sure they remember the price of trying." The final phase of human resistance had been planned since the first alien ships appeared in Earth's skies. It was called Operation Last Light, and it represented the most desperate military strategy in human history. If they couldn't save their world, they would ensure that its destruction became a cautionary tale that would echo across the galaxy for generations. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked frantically in her hidden laboratory beneath the ruins of CERN, where she had spent months developing what she privately called humanity's final gift to the universe. Using captured alien technology and fundamental principles of quantum mechanics, her team had created something that violated every conventional understanding of physics. "The quantum entanglement cascade is ready," she reported to General Chen. "We'll only get one shot at this, and the power requirements will destroy every remaining reactor on the planet." "Do it," Chen replied without hesitation. "If we're going down, we're taking them with us." What the aliens didn't understand was that human creativity, when facing extinction, produced innovations that defied all rational prediction. The device hidden beneath CERN wouldn't just destroy the invasion fleet, it would send a message to every corner of the galaxy about what happened when you underestimated humanity. Master Chief Petty Officer Jackson Williams led the final assault team through the sewers beneath New York City. His target was the alien command post that coordinated orbital bombardment, and his mission was simple: keep them distracted long enough for Operation Last Light to reach completion. "All teams, this is Liberty Prime," he transmitted to resistance cells worldwide. "Time to make some noise." The final battle erupted simultaneously across 6 continents, as the remaining human forces launched coordinated attacks against every alien position on the planet. They had no hope of victory, but they fought with the fury of a species that refused to die quietly. In the ruins of London, Captain Sarah Mitchell led her mixed unit of British and French special forces against a heavily fortified alien communications array. Her brother James had died fighting the Shadow Legion, and she carried his dog tags alongside her own as she prepared for their final charge. "For everyone we've lost," she shouted to her troops as alien plasma fire lit up the night sky around them. "Show them what humans do when there's nothing left to lose." The assault was magnificent and suicidal in equal measure. Human fighters charged across open ground, directly into alien defensive positions, using tactics that prioritized maximum damage over personal survival. They had learned to weaponize their own mortality, turning every death into a force multiplier that made their enemies pay dearly for each victory. Aboard the Dominance, Admiral Zexthul watched the coordinated human attacks with growing unease. "Why are they doing this? We will destroy their planet in 36 hours regardless. These attacks serve no strategic purpose." General Korthax, scarred from his months battling human forces, provided an answer that chilled the bridge crew to their chitinous cores. "They're not trying to win, Admiral. They're trying to hurt us as much as possible before they die. This species treats revenge as a sacrament." The truth was even more profound. The humans weren't just seeking revenge, they were creating a legacy. Every alien casualty, every damaged ship, every tactical innovation was being recorded and broadcast across subspace frequencies that would carry their message to civilizations they would never meet. Lieutenant Commander Chen Wei, son of the resistance leader, transmitted from his position in the ruins of Beijing as alien orbital bombardment began reducing his city to molecular dust. To any species receiving this transmission, know that humanity fought to the end. We faced extinction rather than slavery, and we made our enemies pay for every meter of our world. Remember us, not as victims, but as free beings who chose to die standing rather than live, kneeling. The quantum entanglement cascade activated precisely as alien extinction weapons began their final bombardment sequence. Dr. Vasquez's device created a chain reaction that propagated instantaneously across quantum dimensions, linking every alien ship in the invasion fleet to the fundamental forces holding Earth's atoms together. What happened next violated every known law of physics and would be studied by alien scientists for millennia. As Earth's surface began to burn under the Empire's weapons, the planet itself became a quantum bomb that pulled the entire invasion fleet into a localized space-time collapse. Admiral Zexthul had exactly 0.3 seconds to process what his sensors were telling him before the fabric of reality around Earth began unraveling in ways that drew his ships inexorably toward the planet's surface. The humans had somehow weaponized their own apocalypse. "Impossible," he whispered as gravitational forces beyond comprehension began tearing his flagship apart. No primitive species could. His final transmission cut off as the dominance was drawn into a quantum maelstrom that consumed every ship in the fleet. 17 dreadnoughts, 43 cruisers, and 200 support vessels vanished into a cosmic phenomenon that would leave Earth's solar system quarantined by the Empire for the next 1,000 years. The collapse lasted exactly 17 minutes before space-time reasserted normal parameters. Where Earth had orbited, only a field of exotic matter remained, matter that continued to broadcast a signal containing the complete history of humanity's resistance. The message was received across the galaxy by hundreds of civilizations, many of them under threat from the same Kethmaran Empire that had tried to conquer Earth. For the first time in their expansion, the Empire faced something they had never encountered before. Organized resistance, inspired by human example. On the mining world of Velnari Prime, enslaved populations heard the human transmissions and began organizing their own resistance cells. On the agricultural planet of Zethmor, conquered peoples started employing guerrilla tactics learned from studying human military broadcasts. Across 17 star systems, the Empire's subjects began to understand that even the most advanced military force could be defeated by a species willing to pay any price for freedom. The rebellion that followed would eventually topple the Kethmaran Empire and scatter its remnants across the Outer Rim territories. But that victory was still generations in the future when the Empire's survivors finally returned to the Sol system to investigate what had happened to their invasion fleet. They found no trace of human civilization, no evidence of technological development, no indication that Earth had ever harbored intelligent life. But the exotic matter field continued broadcasting its message, ensuring that humanity's last stand would echo across the cosmos until the heat death of the universe. Fleet Commander Nex Thule, brother to the fallen admiral, stood on the bridge of his survey ship studying the impossible readings from Earth's former orbit. "What kind of species destroys itself to defeat an enemy?" he asked his science officer. "According to their transmissions, a free one," came the quiet reply. The Empire officially classified the Sol system as a natural hazard and forbade any future expeditions to the region. But the truth of what happened there spread through the Empire's military despite all attempts at suppression. The story of humanity's last stand became a whispered legend among alien soldiers, a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating seemingly primitive species. Some claimed that human ghosts still haunted the quantum field where Earth once stood, waiting to drag any Imperial ship that ventured too close into the same dimensional maelstrom that had claimed Admiral Zex Thul's fleet. Others insisted that the broadcasts from the exotic matter contained hidden tactical information that was inspiring rebellions throughout the galaxy. Both stories were wrong in their details but accurate in their essence. Humanity had indeed found a way to turn their extinction into a weapon that would outlast their species by eons. They had proven that freedom was worth any price, and that sometimes the greatest victory came not from defeating your enemies, but from ensuring they could never forget the cost of your defeat. In the deepest archives of the Galactic Confederation that eventually replaced the Kethmaran Empire, scholars would debate for centuries whether humanity had been wise to choose annihilation over surrender. But they all agreed on one fundamental point. No species in recorded history had ever made their destroyers pay such a price for victory. The humans had faced the Empire's elite forces and proven that there was something more dangerous than the finest weapons or the most advanced technology. They had shown the galaxy that the most formidable enemy any conqueror could face was a free people who refused to surrender their dignity, their values, or their right to determine their own fate. Earth was gone, but humanity's legacy burned bright across 1,000 worlds, where oppressed peoples looked to the stars and whispered the words that had become a galactic rallying cry. Remember Earth. Remember that freedom is worth dying for. Remember that even gods can bleed if you're willing to make them. The Empire had deployed their elite forces expecting another easy conquest. Instead, they had awakened something in the galaxy that would ultimately lead to their downfall. The understanding that resistance was not only possible, but that it could exact a price that made even the mightiest empires hesitate before their next act of aggression. Humanity was extinct. But they had achieved something no other species had managed in 10,000 years of galactic history. They had made tyrants afraid, and in the cold depths of space, where Earth once spun peacefully around its sun, the quantum storm continued to rage, broadcasting its eternal message to anyone brave enough to listen. Here stood humanity. They chose freedom over life, honor over survival, and in doing so, they changed the galaxy forever.